Well, right now everything seems to be speeding up. I mean, this is just, it's like I mean, if a lot of the psychedelic thinkers are interested in this whole 2012 date as some kind of culmination point. And both Terence McKenna and Jose Arguelles sort of see that maybe we've been thinking about time different in the wrong way, that we have this linear model of time, and time is actually a kind of waveform or a kind of fractal that repeats on different scales in different ways, and a big wave sort of crests and ends in 2012. So at that point, there has to be a kind of switch over to different world conception. And part of that process now seems to be a kind of very tight, like almost like fugue state, where the destruction is going faster and faster. The reintegration of these ancient knowledge systems is also going faster and faster. So it's going to be like a flight to the finish.
That there is a cosmic event occurring that's causing 24 hours to be not enough time. You know more, you're more aware, you have more feelings, you realize more things. So it's not really time changing, it's you. Because of a cosmic flow of energy that's moving through this universe that can be measured scientifically. Because we sit at the end of a 26,000-year cycle called the precession of the equinox. Our little galaxy, this 1.1 billion planets and stars called the Milky Way, has now traveled 26,000 years to circle what we call the signs of the zodiacs, but through each of the 12 constellations that we now know to be our particular part of the universe.
It almost seems like this galactic alignment, which of course targets the years around 2012, was known to the oldest civilizations in Vedic India and in Egypt, and they believed that these kinds of alignments to the center of the galaxy stimulate transformation on the planet.
And if you do a geological study, doing core drillings into Earth, you realize that this has occurred. You realize that this has occurred many, 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 many times in the Earth's past. Roughly every 26,000 years. Scientifically proven.
Other civilizations, indigenous civilizations, had different kinds of calendars. Hardly any of them, especially the central calendars of civilizations, had to do with this orbit. The archaeologists who have studied ancient civilizations have found that there are many, many calendars, most of them having 360 days. The Tibetan calendar, the Chinese calendar, the Maori calendar, the Celtic calendar, the Hebrew calendar have 360 days, not 365 and 1/4 days. Of course, we've been taught by our educational institutions that those poor primitive people just didn't have it. They just had an approximate solar year that they counted. And they were just too dumb to know the truth. Excuse me, but we're going to stand that on its head today.
Almost universally, the ancient calendars point to this decade, to this time in history, as being unique not only in human history, as we have known it for the last 200,000 years or so, to Earth history, to geologic history as well. Almost universally, the calendars, Chinese calendars, Tibetan calendars, the Mayan calendars, the Egyptian calendars, that were developed thousands of years ago, end in these days. They end in this time, and they all point to now as being a time that's very unique in history.
But the Hopis think that too. The mythology of the people in Mongolia think that too. The tribes on Boa Boa think that too. African nations that's been around thousands of years think that too. The Aborigines think that too. So now we have a changing face of time where multi-cultures unrelated to each other believe the same thing is happening in their mythology. But it also happens to be the end of a 26,000-year cycle, the end of the Piscean Age and the dawn of the Aquarian Age. That mythological story we've always heard in spirituality is now scientifically a reality.
We haven't understood time. Time is of the mind, time is of the spirit. Space is physical. You know, we can see it, we can look at it, we can touch it, we can taste it, we can smell it, we can feel it. But time is of the mind. We haven't explored time. Time is where we're going. Time is where we are. And at the center of time is that timelessness you're talking about. We all want to experience that. We want to have that as the central program of our society. But we're not going to get there until we change the time. So we either change the time or the time changes us. The time is changing us very rapidly right now.
You can be anywhere, anytime, all everywhere, all the time, by the time we get here. To try to explain what that would be like is pretty well impossible. We just don't have the words or the consciousness yet to grasp that.
There's a lot of strange things are happening with my work, too, as a hypnotist. So I just want to say a few things before I get into this part. You probably know I do past life regression, past life therapy. I've been doing it for 40 years, 30 years consistently, and 20 years as a UFO investigator. I work in the deepest possible level of trance, the somnambulistic level. A lot of my hypnotists say they won't work there. They're afraid to work there. They said strange things happen there. See, we are getting ready. We're in the middle of it now. It's happening now. We are moving into a new dimension. The entire world is shifting into a new dimension, a new frequency. I think I've talked before to either here or in other groups about their dimensions all around us. We just can't see them. They're all vibrating at different frequencies. But the most important thing of all, especially right now, is to get rid of all this old karma. We're going to go into something that's very important. We're going into a new world, a new earth. You can't drag this karma with you. The new earth is going to be beautiful and perfect and positive. There's no room for negative karma. You've got to get rid of it. And that's when I'm working with my clients, we discuss these things. What is the quickest but not the easiest way to get rid of karma? Do you know? Some people say, do it back to them. That doesn't do anything but keep perpetuating. Forgive. You have to forgive. You got to let it go. Very, very difficult. Very, very hard. How many of you know Annie Kirkwood? We were talking about the new earth, and she said she had this vision of the earth as a solid ball. Then she saw it begin to separate and move apart the way a cell does when it begins to separate and reproduce, pulling apart like a cell until it broke apart into two earths. Over here, she heard them saying, "We did it, we did it, we did it." Over here, she heard them say, "Poor thing, she died," believing all of that. So see, the one will not be aware of the other. And that's what they mean by those left behind, will not even be aware that anything has happened. The old earth is still there, vibrating at this lower frequency with all these terrible things happening to it, but the other Earth moves into the new dimensions, vibrating so fast it becomes invisible. So they are not aware anything has ever happened.